So, as we move through this journey together, at the same time that I am called to be teaching elder in my tradition, I am also called to be unteaching elder. And these days I seem to do a bit of both, maybe 50-50. So, let me tell you what I think was probably the biggest detour that the Church of Christendom took from the original vision of Jesus and the early Christian communities. At some point, and it's historical and it doesn't matter, but Jesus got up there. And incarnation took a back seat, all right? Incarnation, in the body. Our invitation to take the divine into our bodies, to be divine, just got lost in translation somewhere. So today is about deeply connecting with the divinity within ourselves that Jesus in his ministry affirmed. You, he said. And I think it's just essential that we claim that divine power in ourselves, nurture it, grow it, share it. Here are some words from our tradition that encourage us to do that. And then, as was planned in the series, I have invited 3 of our members to talk about their experience of the sacred in this circle of friends. From Paul. Each one of you is part of the body of Christ, and you were chosen to live together in peace. So let the peace that comes from God control your thoughts and be grateful. Let the message taught by Jesus fill your lives while you use all of your wisdom to teach and instruct each other with thankful hearts. Sing songs, and whatever you say or do should be done in the power of the Spirit. And then from Matthew's Gospel, you are like light for the whole world. A city built on top of a hill cannot be hidden, and no one would light a lamp and put it under a clay pot. A lamp is placed on a lampstand where it can give light to everyone in the house. So make your light shine, that others will see the good that you do.
Speaking in public is not one of my favorite things, but as you know, when Lynne asks, it's sometimes hard to refuse. So, anyway, and I think that it was and I think it's interesting to hear where we're coming from when we're here. Bit of my background, like many of you, I was raised in a Protestant church, in a Protestant church family. We went to church regularly. I participated in all the sort of church things that a kid would do in the various groups, sang in the choir, that sort of thing. And when I went to university, I sort of drifted away from the church, not out of rebellion, but I think mainly because I sort of lost the church community. Margaret comes from a strong family tradition of Roman Catholicism, and, well, in fact, one of her uncles is a priest. And so we raised our kids in the Roman Catholic Church. I never really felt that comfortable in the Roman Catholic Church. And much of their teachings, it may have been my strong Protestant roots. Both of my grandfathers were Methodist ministers before church unification. And one of my distant relatives, Joan Beach, was burned at the stake by the Bishop of Rochester in the 1500s because she said that the sacraments were the symbol of Christ's blood and body and were not truly Christ's blood and body, which didn't go over well with the bishop. Although I never sort of felt quite that threat when I was in the Roman Catholic Church, I didn't quite feel at home. And there wasn't, I don't think, a lot of openness to questioning theology and faith and that sort of thing. And even my grandfather, I remember when he was frail and weak and as an old man and was not far from death, he said, because he'd been a minister for 50 years, and he said, the Bible speaks of the resurrection of the body, but, he says, I don't really want to come back like this. And I was a little surprised at the time, but now I'm not, because, I think that even as a minister, I'm sure he had struggled with many items of faith throughout his life, and I think that I think it's good. I think it's simple to believe certain things, but I think that we do question. It's good to question things, and I think that in this community, I've found that there is that questioning going on, and that was something that I had not found in other places, and so that's been important to me. And another thing about the community is I think that, as Lynne alluded to this morning, community often means that people get together because they have similarity in beliefs and backgrounds. But a problem with that is that if you get too many people with similar beliefs and backgrounds, you end up with a group that's quite closed and not diverse, and then many other people feel not part of that community. And I think here we're at least trying to spread our diversity and welcome everyone and not be closed. When I look in the congregation, we aren't maybe as diverse as we would like to be, but I think that we're open to that and working at that. And I think life is working at things. And hopefully we will become more diverse and remain welcome to people. As I was welcome, even though I'm not somebody even though I have questions about, as I say, faith and theology and that sort of thing. I think that as part of our faith, too, that the action is something that is good. This church is small. It's got Reaching for Rainbows. It's started the 10,000 Villages store. And they say that actions speak louder than words, and I think that's important in a community. And I think we need to keep doing that kind of stuff. And it's another reason I feel comfortable here. I've tinkered with some things and contributed in my own way, although I haven't been involved in those projects. And our motto here of curious, creative, courageous, I think is fitting, and I'm sure a lot of work went into getting that motto. And I hope that we can stay with that idea in the back of our heads all the time. So anyway, I'll end things here, but to just say that the community here has been important to me, and I'm very thankful to feel welcomed here, perhaps more than in other places. And of course, a lot of that's due to Lynne's hard work, her leadership and guidance here, and what I believe, from what I've heard, transformed the church here. So I hope we're heading in the right direction, and I'd like to continue to try to head in whatever directions that we choose to go. Thanks.
I moved to the county about 13 years ago. And while I was living in the big city, I was a very active member of the Unity Church in Toronto on Eglinton Street. And that was my church home. And when I came to the county, I thought, well, I'll find a church home here. having researched and found the fact that the closest Unity was Toronto or Ottawa. At that point, I would have been willing to drive into Kingston if that's where Unity Church had been. So I went to a couple of churches in the community here, one of them which was the church that I had grown, the kind of church I had grown up in, and they were fine. This message was okay, and the people were nice, and at the end of the service, everybody went home. And I wasn't used to that. I was used to a coffee hour and chatting and getting to know people. And so I just left it. I thought, that's fine. And then a friend of mine that I knew from Toronto, from Unity, who had moved here about the same time as me, said to me one time, "You should come to the Presbyterian church." And I said, "Presbyterian? I've never been Presbyterian in my life." But she said, "Come and hear the minister. She's talking a message that will resonate with you." So I came with them the first Sunday, and she was right. The message spoke to me. It was what I had been missing in the Unity, from not having Unity, a positive message, and it was relevant to me in today's life. And the next week, my friends couldn't come, and I thought, well, I'll go anyway. And I found it was the same thing. And the coffee afterwards, and I have no idea who I spoke to at the coffee hour afterwards, but I remember feeling welcomed and one of the group. And I never looked back from there. That was it. This was then my church. And through my involvement with this church, I've also been involved with other groups of friends, for example, 10,000 Villages, and our meditation group, which includes some people from the congregation and some others. And basically, I came here for the theology, and the theology I was promised was exactly what I was looking for. The way I would sum it up is basically the mystery we call God, to use Lynne's terms. I think we're all searching for what that mystery is. And also, it was the congregation, it was the people. I felt like I was part of a group, and it was important. It's important for me to feel like I belong to a group, and a group that we're not all the same. I'm sure we disagree on many, many topics, but we're all searching for leading a better life and understanding just what it's all about. So basically, I came for the theology. I stayed for the community and the fair trade coffee. And I want to thank you all for being part of my church family.
Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you for having me here. I need this because I need this because I forget stuff. I'm on dialysis, and so I try to maximize my time when I'm not on dialysis. And somebody named Kelly, Natalie, was offering piano lessons on this lovely Estonia baby grand piano. And I took it, and that's how I came to this church. And I started looking. At that time, there were quilts on the walls, and there were some paintings. And I got very interested and felt very good, and eventually welcome. I met Lynne, and thank you, Lynne, for inviting us to your wonderful home. And I forget exactly the train of events, but I ended up here, and I felt, and somebody mentioned welcome and comfortable. And I'm not, I've never felt really welcome and comfortable anywhere. So that's a very, very important thing. I need to say that as a person, the prototypical Jewish person, the wandering Jew, I've never really felt welcome and comfortable anywhere, and might never feel that way, but I certainly felt and feel as welcome and comfortable as possible here. And that's a really big thing. When I was a kid, on Shabbat morning, from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday is Shabbos, and that became Sunday. We would say Yom Tov, Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom. And also in German and Yiddish, we would say similar things. Gottesdienst, for example, on a Sunday. So that's a lot of where I come from. When I was, let's see, I got to consult my notes, but now this thing's stuck. Darn. Okay. Anyway, when I was young, we lived on a Saskatchewan wheat pool co-op farm in a little tiny alphabet town. They were called on the CN-CP rail line. And my parents were Holocaust refugees. And they were very deeply affected and stressed by their experiences. My first years on the Saskweet Pool Co-op farm were as a Jewish boy in a family of 3 sisters and myself at that time. And we lived the experiences. My mother had the candles, and on a Friday morning, she'd go out there with her hatchet and did a pretty terrible job of killing one of our favorite chickens in the chicken coop next to the house. And then we'd have chicken for supper that night. And with the candles, she did the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'dvar v'ishnu Yom Tov, which was a blessing with the candles, where you bring the smoke over your eyes and so on. And you're following in the tradition of many centuries, 5,000, I think it was 5,000, the year 5,099 when I was born in that Jewish tradition, on the, I think it was the 14th of Adar, which is the Jewish month that I was born in. But because I was I underwent circumcision, what they call the bris or the brit milah in Hebrew, 8 days afterwards. That was Pesach or Passover at that time in our tradition. And I was, I'm actually a fraud, I'm a phony, I'm not really Peter Sheridan, which is my name. My birth name is Pesach, for Easter or Passover, Halevi, Siegel. That's how I was born. And Halevi means of the Levites, or the book of Leviticus, which is one of the 5 books of the Pentateuch, or the Old Testament. And Siegel is the German translation of that, which means the stamp or seal of the law, which is what the Levites were responsible for, going back to the Babylonian exile about 500 years before the Christian era. So, I mean, everybody had their tradition. For example, Leonard Cohen, who was up there shortly before, came from the class of the priests, the Kohens, and had that tradition. So because of the rampant anti-Semitism, anti-everything, I mean, the community where we lived was this tremendous refugee colony of everybody from Europe, and everybody came with their prejudices and their hatreds and so on. And my parents were reliving that all again. When I was about 6 years old, we were brought to Regina and suddenly baptized by Archbishop O'Neill. And I became Peter Ralph Joseph Sheridan, all of which I was totally unfamiliar with. My father picked the name Sheridan because at that time there was an Irish actress, American-Irish actress named Anne Sheridan, who he had a crush on. And that's how we got our surname. Anyway, and shortly thereafter we moved to Montreal and became first French Catholic, which was very confusing to me. You can see how and why I'm very confused. And then shortly afterwards became English and then Irish Catholic at a parish in Notre-Dame-de-Grâce called St. Malachy's, where I was a little altar boy, as I was in the French parish before. And so I grew up in the Catholic tradition in elementary schools and secondary schools, where I was asked to be an altar boy, as many others were. And first learned the liturgy in Latin, and then French and English. Excuse me. So it was, I was somewhat familiar, but not comfortable in that tradition. And being the little Jewish kid in Catholic schools was a very difficult and painful and a very lonely existence for myself. However, I internalized all this, and I even spent a year as a novice, a supplicant of the Franciscan monastery in Quebec City, where I did, matins and vespers, and had a spiritual advisor and so on. And after a year, I came to accept that was not for me, that I wanted to go on to other things. And I, like Leonard Cohen, explored Buddhism and other traditions, and found a lot of peace and tremendous spirituality in Buddhism. So anyway, I made a very long and torturous path through various religions, and I left religions for a while, and for quite a long time. And eventually, I found myself here, and I found that I had a feeling of welcome amongst a community of seekers, seekers or searchers, if you want, like myself, who were seeking peace, inner peace, and seeking the mystery, as somebody mentioned here, of creation, of creativity as well. I did the mandala thing with David Rankin and so on. And Well, that's how I found myself here. I have a sense of welcome, of no stress or coercion or any underlying proselytization that I found elsewhere. And that is one of the things that's calling me back. That's why I feel comfortable in coming back every Sunday to this place. So thank you very much for your welcome, for having me here amongst you.
Thank you all for sharing from your hearts.